Good evening. You're watching the Urban Debate in Mirror Now. I'm Faye. Thank you for joining us. The Economic Times reported this morning that some members of the government are considering perhaps bringing in a prenuptial agreement or making it legal in India to include prenuptial agreements. This would basically be an agreement that people sign before they get married that helps them decide how they would divide their assets if there was ever a case of divorce. Well, there are two arguments here, and one of the main concerns is the rights of women in India who marry NRIs and who then are perhaps abandoned. Will a prenuptial agreement guarantee them some sort of rights after marriage? We also have to remember India is a country that doesn't have a concept of alimony. In the West, for example, husbands and wives divide their assets 50-50 after marriage. That's not what happens in India. In India, a court will grant a wife, a divorced wife, something of an allowance based on her quality of life and whether or not she needs support from her husband, and that depends on the discretion of the court. There is no concept of alimony. Would a prenuptial agreement make things easier for Indian couples, or is it just something that will kill the romance? Our phone lines are open, so is involve.in. Feel free to call in, vote in, give us your view. Joining us on the show right now, Kumar Jagirdar, men's rights activist. Anup George Chaudhary is a former Advocate General Madhya Pradesh. Amrita Sathe Pathak is a lawyer with the Bombay High Court who specializes in family law. Priya Hingorani is the former Vice President of the Supreme Court Bar Association and former member of the legal panel Women and Child Development Ministry. Raghav Ohri is the journalist who wrote this particular article we're discussing. And Naveen Chomal is a senior advocate. I welcome all of you to this conversation. Thank you so much for joining us on the show. I'm going to start, I'm going to start with asking Priya Hingorani. Priya, if you can tell us how viable this suggestion is, if at all, and if you think India is ready for prenuptial agreements. We seem to have lost the audio there with Priya. I'm going to take the same question to Amrita Sathe. Amrita, if you can hear me, do you think India is ready for prenuptial agreements, Amrita?
Yes, I can. See, Faye, basically, India probably at this stage, though we are at a very preliminary stage where we are deciding about the prenup agreement to be legalized.
Yes.
So we need to first change the mindset, of the people of this country to accept this, because they believe the marriage to be a very sacrosanct institution. And then with the prenup coming into force, it's like a contract, basically, between two parties who will decide that in case that their marriage does not work, how well will they settle the monetary issues concerning them. But however, my personal view in this regard is that, of course, it's going to be very helpful, because the parties, when they get into this relationship called marriage, they will predominantly decide about the monetary issues, they will decide about the liabilities, how the same has to be shared. They can also decide that in case that there is any trouble in their relationship, the divorce can happen mutually. So I think at a longer, if you take it at a longer perspective, prenup agreement is a need of the hour today, since the litigation is really rigorous, and it will help the courts also to come up to some kind of monetary relief that one can grant to the wife, to the woman.
Right. I just want to read out some of the responses our viewers are sending us. Rakesh says, marriage is a personal thing. How can you turn it into a contract? We have Jay who says, this indeed is a good thing. It will help people become more independent. And Jay also says, but it won't be welcomed in rural India. But Jay, I think that the thing we should remember is this is an option. It's not compulsory. It's not like everybody's going to have to create a prenup. But right now in India, if you want one, you can't create one because it's not valid. And I'm going to go to Raghav. Raghav is the journalist who broke that story. Raghav, what have you picked up so far? Can you take us through the information that you have? Is this at the nascent stage? Is it still, how much further will this have to go before it, moves to, say, the law ministry?
Hey, as you rightly said, this is pretty much at the nascent stage. And I would like to add here, this is not the first attempt by the government to introduce this. This was somewhere in September 2015, if my memory serves me right, when Maneka Gandhi had initiated this move. And somehow this could not take off, because one of the secretaries in the ministry itself, he opined that this would lead to breakdown of marriages, and this would eventually lead to reducing marriages to a mere contract. Now this was not accepted by the ministry because it appeared as very orthodox and a very regressive opinion. Now 3 years down the line, they have come up with this renewed idea, so to speak, to hold a wider consultation. Now this would involve members from the National Commission for Women, Law Ministry, NGOs, eminent lawyers, so on and so forth. So basically the idea is to map out the modalities, to pin down the roadblocks, if at all any, in initiating and introducing prenups. One of the core areas which have been zeroed down is the amendment of the Indian Contracts Act, Section 23 and 26. If there is a consensus and if the government reaches a conclusion that yes, we want to introduce prenups, then there will be amendments made in the Contract Act and I think the CRPC as well. But like I said, it's too early to reach any conclusion, because the government is about to decide and debate this in the very first meeting, which is on 26th of March.
Mr. Chaudhary, former Advocate General of Madhya Pradesh, please, what is your view here?
Yes. You know, I think everybody who's discussing here doesn't have an iota of idea about what Contract Act is. There is no need to amend the Contract Act, because prenuptial agreement is an agreement between two persons who are competent to enter into an agreement, and a contract is nothing but an enforceable agreement. An agreement which can be enforced is a contract. Now there is merely, as a description, a contract entered between two persons before marriage is called postnuptial, and you must also know there is something called prenuptial and there is something called postnuptial agreement as well. Only question here arises is where the family courts or the courts in India should enforce this. Otherwise also it could be enforced under the specific, by way of a specific performance of contract. That also can be enforced, because after all, they lay down in any agreement for that matter. Merely describing it as prenuptial doesn't mean it is not an agreement. It is an agreement. Prenuptial merely means a stage at which this agreement is entered into between the husband and the wife to be. That's how it is. Therefore, only thing that the government has to come out with an act is, let us see what happens. Like in the US, I'll give you an example. Each state, the Supreme Courts have decided that it has to be enforced. That's all. There is no question of any other enforcement. And the family courts should be authorized to enforce it. Otherwise, the person goes to a normal civil law to get it enforced, follow the civil procedure court and file a civil suit and seek a specific performance of that contract, which also can be sought. But that will be a long drawn-out process. Therefore, if family courts are authorized by a law here in India, they have only to authorize that the manner of in the Hindu Marriage Act also there is a procedure for divorce. There is an Indian Divorce Act which takes care of the Christians, divorce amongst Christians, and there is Special Marriages Act where it takes care of divorce amongst in-court marriages.
Yes.
So that provision has to be brought about, that if such a prenuptial agreement has been entered into, it will be enforceable in court, and the court should immediately grant a decree in line with those agreements. That is how the legal position is.
Right. Let me just bring in the other two guests here. Naveen Chomal, Senior Advocate. Mr. Chomal, do you believe that India is ready for prenuptial agreements? And I just want to reiterate this again. It's not compulsory. It will be an option for those people when both parties agree that this is something they want. Mr. Chomal, go ahead.
See, the question is not whether India is ready or not. The main thing is, we are a civilization which has lasted for over 15,000 years, and all our previous thinkers of the society have framed the structure of a family in such a way that the family should last for lifelong, the society should last for generations after generation. So as compared to the Western civilization, where we are seeing the ill effects of their lack of vision and prudence, where they are giving importance to, say, individual freedom so much, where the society is getting, what you say, scattered, and there are so many cases of suicide, psychos and shrink requirement is there. So their social structure is getting, what you say, shattered. Whereas our society has lasted for 15,000 years. So please appreciate, our marriage system is a very beautiful marriage system, where marriage is a holy union between a man and woman. It's a sacrament, and woman is given the respect of an ardhangini. Both are supposed to perform their duties as say two wheels of a particular vehicle together, running together. Both have to do karmas together, both have to do pious acts together, and there are various things in our marriage where the husband and wife, they are both told
Mr.
about their
you do realize that
responsibilities,
India has a rising divorce rate, and what happens
so there are many things with it.
Please,
So if,
this has nothing to do with
so
this.
if
Don't take this.
ultimately if we start
we are not come here to
all
learn
these
civilization.
prenuptial agreements, it
Can I
will
just butt in?
exponentially lead to
No.
divorce cases.
But you have to be practical. You have to be practical. Divorces
I
are
don't
taking
think
place 1 to a dozen these days.
What
And as
practical?
women
You have to
get-
be prudent.
I don't
You
think
can't
prenup
be
is talking
copycat
about
the Western
getting
people.
I don't think
see
today,
where
right?
they are
Obviously.
going. They are
All right, gentlemen, one at a
destroying
time.
themselves.
Naveen Chomal, if you
I
can
think
hear me.
prenup
There is
is
a
only
question
going
of
to help
Western,
people
Eastern, Northern,
to
Southern, nothing to
have
do with
divorce
Western.
easily
I-
and
I-
settle all the issues,
Yes.
easily. I don't think that by entering into prenup we are going to say that, oh, this marriage is not going to be a sacrosanct institution. I think it is just an optional thing where two couples want to decide on what will happen after there are any differences in their relationship and how they want to proceed with that without getting into the rigmarole of the litigation or washing dirty linen in public. I don't think by signing prenup agreement we are saying that as per Hindu marriage, this marriage is not going to be a sacrosanct thing. So I do not agree. I think prenup will help the courts
But why
better.
only Hindu? There
Will
are
help the
other,
courts
other
better to
people of other
understand.
religions in this country, and to him other
So I'm
them other
talking
laws
for
apply.
everybody.
Don't go only
I'm
on Hindu
talking for
marriage.
everybody.
Please.
Right. So actually, that's a
There
very
Everybody, I
fair
agree
point,
with you.
Naveen
I
Chomal.
agree
Naveen
with
Chomal,
exactly what
the
you're saying.
Indian civilization that you're talking about is not just Hindu. It is multicultural. We have the Special Marriage Act that is an interreligious marriage act, and this is very fair. Divorces drag on for a really long time. Children get dragged into divorces. Family members get dragged into divorces. It's a time-consuming and, more importantly, money-consuming process, which you know well because you're a lawyer yourself. This would be a way to actually cut down all of those expenses. I do have one member of my panel who hasn't spoken yet, Kumar Jagirdar. Yes.
The basic endeavor of the courts and the law is to see that the marriage don't break up. Even the judges keep on trying to tell the litigating couples, don't break away, we'll try to have a patch up between you, we'll console both of you.
Which will continue to happen.
Basically, breaking of the marriage is not a solution.
Yes.
So if we are,
But that, I don't think that.
No, but how would this change that?
That the marriage will survive.
Exponentially.
This is
The
only
marriage
in the
will start
event
breaking up
that
so
the marriage
easily.
does not
So you are
survive.
going
Then
to
only this comes into
destroy
play.
the fabric of the institution of marriage.
In fact, Mr. Chomal, if there is a prenuptial
the idea
agreement
may
signed,
look
Mr.
prima facie
Chomal,
I don't know,
very
if there is a
attractive.
prenuptial
But-
agreement signed entitling the spouse to 50% of the assets, I think the other spouse in question will try very hard to keep that marriage together, so they don't have to part with 50% of their assets. This might not actually always result in divorce.
that
In
is
fact,
not
it
the case.
depends on how you frame
I
it.
agree with you. I agree with you.
No. That may be in a very rare case.
Absolutely.
But
prenup
And it's
is
not
not
only
only
a
about
asset. Please
what
understand.
sort of-
It's
All right.
also-
We're all talking at the same time. One
every
second,
sanctity
Naveen
of the
Chomal. All
marriage.
right.
But they
We're just going to calm down for a second because the audience cannot understand us when we all speak at the same time. Kumar Jagirdar, go ahead, Kumar Jagirdar. Where do you stand on this matter?
Yes. The men's group have been fighting for prenuptial agreement because there's utter confusion, in the family courts. It is all women-centric. The men stand to lose. the husbands, once they are struck with a bad marriage, it's like a tsunami situation. They tend to lose the money, they lose the job, they lose the children, they lose the car, they lose the house, everything. This is the position of we men. So the laws are so much one-sided in favor of the women. Men are suffering like anything. So at least the husbands know how much we will lose, what we will lose. Because now the situation is that except for what dress they are wearing, everything they may lose, the family court. That is the situation. So we want this prenuptial agreement to be regularized, and we have been fighting very hard for this. In fact, it will have some deterrent to save the marriages, because the children also can be knowing where they stand, because going with single parenting and the mother takes the entire family, because there will be some sacrifice for the mother also to take care of the children and be in the family. What happens is now everybody is thinking that anyway the marriage, I will get my children, I will get the property, I will get a monthly maintenance, why I should stay with this fellow? This sort of situations are coming. And in Bangalore there are 25,000 cases pending in the Bangalore family court. Yes. And in India there are more than 7 to 8 lakh cases. In the urban, which is 40% of the country, the divorce rates are going up 30% year on year. So that talking about the civilization and all, it won't work now. The today's situation reality is, we have to accept that divorce is a part and parcel of our life. Marriage is a big gamble. In the gamble, we should know how much we have to stand to lose, what is the stop loss. Everything should be done properly in a rigorous way. And it's also a waste of time for the courts to go into the merits of the case, because most of the allegations are false allegations. The wife puts a dowry case, a domestic violence case, a maintenance case, and the husband has to run around 5 to 7 years to prove his innocence. Under the circumstances, there is no peace of mind. Even the parents go to the jail, So in this sort of circumstances, it is compulsory. Otherwise, men will go their own way.
So Kumar Jagidar, I understand what you're saying, but I want to rebut you on a couple of things. One second, if I may. And I'll take this to Mr. Chaudhary. I don't think it's fair to say that women get everything every time. That's not always the case. And secondly, you seem to think that every domestic violence case is fake, which might not be right as well. Mr. Chaudhary, go ahead, please.
No. Listen, neither a man or a woman, both are equally placed as far as they should be believed or they should not be believed. It doesn't mean that if she is a woman, she is 100% telling the truth. It doesn't mean that he is a man, he is telling 100% the truth. Therefore, we cannot say who is wrong and who is right and take it for granted that always the woman is the main culprit and the husband is on the losing side. When prenuptial agreements take place, it could also mean that the wife's property, wife has an asset or a property that could be a subject matter of division as well. We are forgetting that. We are only going on one side. These days, so many couples are earning couples, both of them. In some matters, wife is doing exceedingly well, much better than what the man is doing. Therefore, if a prenuptial agreement comes into existence, it will take care of both the things, and both parties before marriage will be shown off that emotion which is there, and they will think coolly and enter into a prenuptial agreement that in case their marriage fails, in case it is necessary to have a divorce, then what will be the consequences? Who will share what? Who will have the custody of the children, etc., etc.
Right, I think Mr.
That is how it should be, and it is.
Yes.
And the government has to
come out with this. We are fully supporting this because of this.
You will have to amend the Special Marriages Act. You will have to amend the Indian Divorce Act. You will have to amend the Hindu Marriage Act. All these acts will be amended.
One second. One at a time. Let me just take this first. 1 second, Naveen Chaumal. I want to take this to Amrita Sathe. 1 second. Amrita Sathe, would you explain to us how, like Mr. Chaudhary was just telling us, how alimony or on the other, in our case in India, we have a system of support after divorce, financial support after divorce. How does it work? How is it decided?
Let me just see, I'll tell you, as far as the lump sum alimony is concerned, okay, there is no provision where a lump sum alimony is given by the court. However, if the parties agree out of the court settlement, then there is a provision where a husband can provide for a lump sum alimony. Whereas when they are fighting it in the court of law, there is a concept of maintenance, okay, which is available under every law, which is available even under the Domestic Violence Act. Now, maintenance, the concept of maintenance will include residence, food, shelter, everything. So the court will take into consideration the husband's income, as well as if the wife is working, her income and the lifestyle that is enjoyed by the parties while they were staying together. So even in case of prenup agreement, I think both the parties, it will be fair to both the parties to decide about the monetary compensation after divorce, and it will be easier even for the courts to decide about the monetary compensation, or to decide about the issues of custody, issues of assets, issues of liabilities. I think prenup agreement is the need of the hour today.
Right. The other question I want to bring up is the fact that if we are making an agreement, Mr. Chaudhary, if we are making an agreement, then we have to assume that marriage is an agreement to begin with. Now, while, for example, under the Muslim Marriage Act, it is an agreement, under the Hindu Marriage Act, marriage is not considered an agreement. Would that need to be changed in any way, Mr. Chaudhary?
Even amongst the Christians, it's a sacred, even amongst the Christians, it's a religious sacred sacrament.
Yes.
Even among the Christians, it's a sacrament. It's not a contract. Amongst the Muslims, it's a contract. But let me put one thing, clear the cobwebs on this issue. It is not necessary that the nuptial agreement will not provide for even alimony. That also can be a part of the agreement. Alimony can be included in it. There is no such hard and fast rule that what cannot be and what can be included in the agreement. It's strictly between the two parties, as the contract is. Both parties agree that these should be the terms and conditions of the contract. Simple. Only enforceability has to be ensured under the marriage laws, under various kinds of marriage law that we have in India. Therefore, only that has to be ensured by an act, by incorporating them in the various acts under which divorce is granted in India. Otherwise, by itself, there is nothing wrong in a contract. It could have been, even if there is no such
strongly beg to differ with these views.
Amended, nothing prevents from both parties to have an agreement and a contract, and this is called a contingent contract in law. There's something called a contingent contract. That means the contract comes into being on the happening of a particular event. Therefore, this could be that this is the contract between A and B, which could take place even without any legal provisions, provisions in the various marriage acts, that in case the marriage or in case the divorce takes place, this agreement will come into force. Therefore, because of that contingency, this agreement comes into place, and you could still have this. But the problem would be that the either party could have it enforced under these by filing a suit in a court for specific performance of contract. That will be a long drawn-out procedure in India. Maybe the children will also get married and divorced, but the suit will go on. So for that purpose only, to save time, it's necessary that the amendments and the enforceability of this agreement is brought about in the various marriage laws.
Right, we have a couple of people on the phone line, but I understand that that Naveen Chomal still has a point to make. Naveen Chomal, go ahead.
Yes. See, we must leave the sacred institution of marriage alone. We should not try to pollute these streams of marriage with the concepts of contract and the concepts of breaking of the marriage so easily and predetermined manner. Please appreciate that basically the concept of our law, the legislatures and even the courts, is that they try to preserve the marriage even if the litigants come to the court. So, and whatever is best in the interest of a woman or a man, it is a court decides based on situation to situation and case to case. So, if the parties have a pre-nuptial agreement, maybe they must not have visualized many things which the judges are more prudent to visualize. So, ultimately they cannot supersede the judgment as the prudence of the judge or the legislature. So it will be very risky and very dangerous for our society that couples, they enter into some agreement and ultimately get it enforced over the law, over the wisdom of the judge. So ultimately we have to leave it to the wisdom of the judge as per the law framed by the constitution or the...
No, hang on.
It will not be
Naveen
safe for our society.
Naveen Chomal.
Law is not framed by the constitution, by the way.
It takes
law is made by the parliament.
For a diverse
thing to say about framing of the law by a constitution.
Legislature, I corrected myself.
Even this, if and when this does become a regulation, it will be done by parliament. Nobody else has the authority to frame or to change the law. First of all, Naveen Chomal. And
Yes,
this
yes.
agreement...
Has
No,
to be
but
an act
then
of the
what we
parliament.
are opposing is the parliament should also not allow somebody to
So no, actually it does,
ultimately
you know, but Naveen
supersede the
Chomal, it
wisdom of the
sounds like
judge.
you are opposing divorce altogether and not opposing prenuptial
optional.
agreements.
Parliament has allowed
It's
divorce.
optional.
What is she talking about?
That is,
Parliament has allowed
And
divorce
I'm
to take
going to take
place.
everything into
On
consideration
mutual
that
consent.
once the marriages have
before
taken
passing
place,
this,
all efforts
before
should be
legalizing this.
It is in the interest of the society.
It's in the interest of the society that two unhappy people who don't love
It
each
is
other
in the
anymore
interest
continue
of
to
the
live
society
together.
that the litigation needs to finish early.
It's how is this in the interest of society that two people who are unhappy continue to be
It is
married?
not like that. See, it is. Let me clarify.
That's exactly
Let me clarify. It is not.
Basically,
It is
the other
in
way
the
around.
interest of the
How
society
can it be
that when the
like
marriage
when
takes
two
place,
people are
they should not be
already
allowed to break away so easily. Homes
The
should not
marriage
be
is
broken so
irretrievably
easily.
broken
And
down.
even if they are to be allowed to be broken,
I
it is
think
for
it's
the
in the
judge
interest
to
of the
decide
society that
whether it
people
is
get
right or
justice
not,
fast.
whether this situation is apt or not.
I'm sorry.
So please appreciate it will
Right,
lead
right.
to
Let me also go to Priya Hingorani. If
It will
Priya
break
can
our
hear me,
society.
Priya, I
It
apologize.
will
One
break
second.
the fabric of our society.
One second.
It will
Let me go
long-term,
across to Priya Hingorani. 1 second, Naveen
devastating
Chomal.
effects on
I don't think
Priya,
it's
Priya, if you can hear me. There are two sides of this argument. One that believes that this will actually shorten the process of divorce and make it less painful than it is right now in terms of time and money and energy and the toll it takes on families. And the other point of view Mr. Naveen Chomal is bringing in is that it's bad for society, it's bad for the fabric of society, and judges should decide when divorces happen, not the individuals. Priya Hingorani, go ahead.
Exactly.
No. I don't agree at all to either of these views because please understand the women in this country are the biggest sufferers in a matrimonial relationship. Kindly understand the Dowry Prohibition Act is there, the dowry prohibition rules are there. The biggest problem in our country is the giving and taking of dowry, the dowry deaths which take place in our country, domestic violence which takes place because of bringing insufficient dowry. The need of the hour, according to me, is bringing a law which the government is seriously thinking on bringing in prenuptials as a legal remedy, is one of the legal remedies. As it was mentioned earlier on your program, it is a choice.
I got a counter to it. I got a counter to it.
Let her finish, please. Let her finish.
For the parties.
See,
I want to kindly let me
Let her
finish,
finish, please.
It is a choice for two individuals who get into a relationship.
no, let me.
Who get
Naveen
into
Chomal,
a
1 second.
relationship in a marriage. Will you allow me to speak? I think this is the basic courtesy to another fellow speaker. Please give me you've had your say. Please, the two individuals, the kind of cases, the time which takes in courts for the litigants, whether it's a boy or a girl, is too long because there are various reasons, shortage of judges, pendency of cases. There are a lot of reasons for it. Trial doesn't conclude. The whole purpose of 498A and 406 gets defeated in genuine cases. So I think this is in our country where 70% are the youngsters who are making a choice when they get married. It's an informed choice. Very few cases where they go in for an arranged marriage. Even if they go in for an arranged marriage, now they meet each other. So it's important that they know their legal right, that there is an option of having a prenuptial agreement where both the parties would be not fighting with each other for over years, for whether it is for maintenance, property rights, or even for the gifts which are exchanged with each other. So I think it's a welcome step. It should have happened some years ago. As it was mentioned, 2015 was the first time it was thought of. I think we really need to consider it.
Right.
We really need to consider it because it's an informed choice.
I second.
Sorry?
Right. Kumar Jagidar wants to respond. Kumar Jagidar, go ahead.
Agreement is in the best interest of the children.
Also,
yes. Prenuptial agreement is in the best interest of the children. Why? Because most of the fathers are not able to meet their children because the wife puts some sort of a criminal case. It can be dowry case, it can be domestic violence, it can be 506 something. So in that type of situation, the child and the father access is gone. Now when there is agreement that there is no exchange of dowry, these false cases will stop itself. And also the forced marriages, like because of the parents' force, some people get married. Such things can be stopped. There are a lot of advantages for prenuptial agreement, and we are for this. And in this sort of a system where we are changing as per international standards, we Indians also should change our marriage system. It's like an insurance. We should know how much a man can, what does the marriage bring in? What is the worst which can happen to us? Everything should be, in a scientific way, in a proper agreement. We can't say we are traditional, this thing, our culture, our 15,000 years culture, all this is gone. If you see like that, in Hindu culture, there is no divorce at all. But Parliament has accepted divorce. Under the circumstances, we should also accept prenuptial agreement, which is a should and must, and this will save the marriages actually, because everybody knows that they can't go out of the marriage because there is agreement which is binding on both the parties, and the children will have access with both the parents,
okay.
and that is in the best interest of the society. So we are feeling that the Parliament has to immediately pass this legislation.
Right, Mr. Chaudhary wants to respond, and then Priya, I'm going to come back to you. Mr. Chaudhary, go ahead.
May I just come in for a minute, please? Yes, I'll tell you, what we have forgotten is we are all talking about first-time marriages. This prenuptial agreement is of a great help if people are marrying at later age. If a person is marrying after a first divorce or a second divorce, or it is their third marriage or maybe the second marriage, you must understand that as well. It's not always that we are talking, when a prenuptial agreement of this nature, if it is recognized in law and enforceability is provided in a quicker way than normal as it is by now, this will also help those marriages which are second marriage, maybe a third marriage, maybe children from the first marriage, maybe children from the second marriage, and people who are getting married at a later age, say at the age of 50, 55, 60, like that. This also helps. It has been found, especially not only in the US but other places also, that this is the acrimony and the bitterness of post-divorce between the spouses, that is taken away to a great extent, because then they know that this is going to be the situation after a divorce takes place, and they are well aware of it, they are psychologically attuned to it, and they have reconciled themselves mentally and otherwise also to this rather a fait accompli which comes about by way of this prenuptial agreement.
Right, I have Nilima Singh on the phone line from Hyderabad. She's a viewer who has just called us. Nilima, go ahead. We can hear you.
Hi, Faye. I was going through. I mean, I've been following through and through this series now. Thing is, I don't know why they are confusing prenup agreement towards sanctity of the marriage. I mean, how is it even related? I mean, if Mr. Naveen thinks that, our Indian Sanskriti is being spoiled by Western cultures, I think he should just wake up and look around, what is happening in our country. I mean, he said they need psychiatrists, we don't. I mean, I don't know where he's coming from, but I think it's absolutely, irrelevant. Sanctity of a relationship is nothing to do with prenup. One, let's say, for example, we take accidental insurance. Why do we take it? We don't take accidental insurance because we want to go ahead and hit somebody and meet with an accident. We take accident insurance so that in the eventuality, what can happen? So the prenup is like an insurance for both the parties. I come from a divorce. I'm divorced for the last 4 years. I was the main earner of the family, and I had to take a divorce because the person was abusive. He wouldn't work, and our lives were going down the drain. Now, when I had to take the divorce, the only condition he agreed to give me a divorce was when I said I wouldn't want any financial help from him. That is the only way he could give me a divorce. And I wanted to save my parents, my family, my life altogether from any further hassle, any further mental trauma. That is the reason I gave a divorce. But if I had something like a prenup in before my marriage, if it was legalized, if we were aware of things like this, I think I would have been in a better situation. I think I am talking on behalf of a lot of people, a lot of women who are like me, who are going through a situation like this.
Yes. Amrita Sathe, go ahead.
I agree with Nilima. Not only this, I don't want to say by entering into a prenup agreement does not necessarily mean, Faye, can I just say one thing?
Amrita, please. Amrita.
That if two educated people can decide to get, if two educated people can decide to get married, I don't understand why two educated people cannot decide as to what will happen if there is any turmoil in their relationship. by entering into a prenup agreement, I don't think that all these marriages are going to break into a divorce. I think we are just trying to protect everybody's rights, everybody's interests, and we are going to minimize the trouble or the turmoil that is caused to everybody, to the families, to the children. So I think prenup agreement has to be done, and I agree with the caller that you know, prenup agreement, that it's not going to break the sanctity of marriage in any way.
Yes, Raghav wanted to come in as well. Raghav Ohri, the journalist who broke the story this morning. Raghav, go ahead.
Faye, I have a limited point to make. All I want to say is that, you know, without prejudging the issue, we can always look at prenups as an additional remedy available to the couples before they enter into a wedlock, of mapping out the ownership of liabilities, the do's and don'ts, if the marriage or the union fails. I don't think we should jump the gun. That is my limited point.
Right. Naveen Chomal, go ahead.
See, with due respect to our caller Nilima and Priya also, the point
Yes.
they have said in the marriage system, woman is the sufferer and she is at the receiving end. See, well taken. I have understand what they are trying to say. There is no doubt about it. But prenuptial agreement and system to break up from the marriage is not the solution to it. I have been canvassing and many times on your channel also that our education system must basically come out with a formula where the men, boys should be basically given a teaching right from the childhood that they are supposed to grow up as a gentleman, they should respect the woman, they should take care of the woman, they should have the
Mr. Chomal, what does this have to do with what we're talking
they should not lift their hands on the woman. So that is all this thing, means the real purshat should be taught to the men. So once that is happening in our society, then the moral science that we teach to the men, I think many of the problem what Nilima and this Priya is telling her can be cured. So it is not that the prenuptial agreement will be a solution to all these things.
So,
Men will be men.
so I'm going to take this. I'm going to give this to Priya. Priya, in response to Naveen Chomal, who says, let's cure this with education instead of bringing in prenuptial agreements.
See, the thing is, the change in mindset is also the other aspect of the matrimonial life. There is a need for change of mindset, yes, but at the same time, I'm telling you with my experience of having worked in this line for the last 3 decades, we have cases from across the world. We have young girls who get married and go to Australia, Canada, UK, US, and the kind of problems they face. Whereas in these countries, there is already a concept of prenup. And the boys who actually take our young girls from here, who they get married, they suffer because they are sent back. They cannot enforce the prenuptial agreement because it's not made with them, because India has not legalized it. We have vast problems. We have various issues which need to be looked into, and I think this is a very welcome step, as it is one of the alternate remedies, an alternative which is available. And also not only that, when you look at the kind of cases which are pending in these courts here, it's not just one divorce case which is filed. Along with the divorce case, there is a 498A case filed, which is a domestic violence, there's a 125 CRP maintenance case filed. So at the end of the day, when the courts have now started taking the view that either send them to mediation, because at the end of the day, mediation is one forum where maximum matrimonial matters go, where they are resolved, because at the end of the day, it is how much would you settle for, how much would you give and end this marriage. Courts have started taking that very liberal view, and marriages are getting settled, the disputes are getting settled in the mediation centers. And also, the end of the day, all these cases get quashed, because that's what the court does. So,
you know, there's another point. You know, Priya brought in an interesting point. Yes, and I want the panelists to comment on this. Mr. Chaudhary, I see you. The fact that in India, especially in India, there is a system of marrying a complete and total stranger. Someone who has flown down from the US or the UK and who finds a girl and marries her in 3 weeks flat. You don't know what this person's personal history is, what relationships they've had in the past, what their medical history is like, what their personal habits are like. There's no guarantee. all the more reason why you need to have a prenuptial agreement when we have money changing hands, we have assets changing hands at weddings. All the more reason why we need to put these things down, because these are not marriages based on love, these are all relationships, these are marriages that are arranged. Wouldn't a prenuptial agreement actually suit the arranged marriage system more than it would suit any other system? Mr. Chaudhary, your response please.
Yes. Absolutely, absolutely. I am in total agreement with what has been said on this issue by Priya. I fully agree. The question is, when we discuss these issues, we have to be dispassionate. We have to be practical. We can't close our eyes and go centuries back and not indulge in sanctimonious pontification on these issues. It's all well right to give a moralizing lecture, but can we shut our eyes to what is happening every day with us? We all know how many hundreds of divorces are taking place. Marriages don't last at all. Some of my friends' daughters have got married, and within 2 years they are out. She is nursing a small child. It's happening so often, and rightly said that in many cases in India, in very many cases rather, it are all arranged marriages. The mother and the father go and see, they pick up the girl, or the mother and the father of the girl go and pick up see the boy, and they approve of the boy without they meeting each other at all. So for this, the prenuptial agreement is definitely going to be a great boon for couples like this who have never known each other, so that they know and understand, and they can avoid all unnecessary litigation, acrimony, etc. in the courts in case the marriage fails. It's all in case the marriage fails.
Yes.
And that the lady on the phone, who was herself a divorcee, is very right. Because you cannot say that because of this agreement the marriage will fail. No, this is contingent upon the fact, like I said, it's a contingent contract, upon the marriage failing and contingent upon the fact that a divorce takes place. Then what happens? That's the issue. So therefore, I think this is a very essential part of our system. This is brought in, and this kind of prenup agreement has made a part of the law in all the statutory acts of marriages relating to different religions, and also court marriage, so that it becomes very easily enforceable, not only in India,
yes,
but this could be enforced by outside India as well.
Absolutely. That's a very good point. And let's not forget how much money is spent on weddings in India, and how sometimes that leads to debt as well. Yes, I'm coming to you, Priya. I have one phone call, and I want to take, and I have a feeling you'd want to respond to this phone call as well. Yeah. Radhika Seth is on the phone line from Mangalore. Radhika, go ahead. Yeah. Radhika.
Yes, I think we lose a lot of time in litigation today.
Yes.
And once the lady gets married, she's cut off from a marital home. So in case something goes wrong and she gets nothing out of her marriage, where does she go to?
Absolutely.
So definitely there is a prenup. She also will be more stable, and she will not waste her time running to every court and wasting precious time which she would have otherwise worked productively. It's just because there's a prenup, it's not going to be that there's a divorce there.
Absolutely.
So it's just as a prevention or a safety net for the girl.
Yes, it's going to minimize litigation.
I mean to say that the boy also is
it will minimize litigation
to a cheating wife. So
yes,
in both cases, a prenup agreement is the best.
Is the best. Priya, you want to respond to that?
Yeah, I just wanted to make a comment, one more comment, which I think is very important when we are looking at this law which is coming in. See, what has happened, if we have this kind of a law in place and prenuptials are legalized in India, it will be a very big deterrent for the asking of dowry, for asking for lavish weddings, for asking for cars, bungalows, and you name it. And this kind of thing will, once it is all written down in a piece of paper and witnessed as to what is being given and what is being taken, a lot of all this harassment for the girl's family will stop. And I think it's very important. We have not actually given effect to the Dowry Prohibition Act. Or the rules clearly say giving and taking of dowry is a punishable offence. So, and I haven't seen a case where it's been blatant cases where I'm sorry to butt in here, Priya. It is termed as goods. Absolutely. Yes. Yes. It will also act as a deterrent where a woman will file false, you know, there are women who file false cases against a man for dowry harassment, for under domestic violence. I think it's going to be a deterrent even to that effect.
Absolutely.
And everybody will have fair distribution and fairness in everything.
To that effect.
All right, I'm going to give the last word here to Mr. Anup Chaudhary. Mr. Anup Chaudhary.
It's actually been a misuse.
Right, okay, sorry. Kumar Jagirdar, go ahead, please.
Yes, yes. See, I have seen cases where for 1 month marriage, they were litigants, for 10 years. So just for 1 month marriage. So if there was agreement, the entire youth could have been saved, they could have remarried, okay, and the families wouldn't have suffered. So one broken marriage, at least 10 people in each family would suffer from both the sides. So what I'm telling is, as we are progressing, in our economy, and we are becoming one of the richest countries also, we should also accept the fact that divorce is a way of life. We can't say, instead of suffering and separation and staying out when the marriage is broken for 10 years, 15 years, and then having extramarital affairs and telling that marriage is still on because we not got the court order. How can, when the courts don't interfere with the marriages, or why should the court also interfere with the divorce? So it should be that we have, entered into agreement, we have done pre-marriage counseling, we are entered into agreement, so it becomes a part of evidence, and the divorce will be granted by the family court, taking into account the facts and circumstances of the case by seeing the agreement copy, which until that has been challenged, it is a good enough document. So it's a welcome step. And I also want to compliment Mirror now for taking this very sensitive subject. And this is the in thing, and we have to immediately go for this.
But I want to give the last word to Mr. Anup Chaudhary. Mr. Chaudhary, interestingly, the women's rights activist and the men's rights activist both agree on this particular note that the prenuptial agreement will save everybody a lot of pain and a lot of wasted time. It's something the government should consider in your mind?
See, any sensible person will agree with this. Any sensible person will agree, because a law which helps everybody and concerned, everybody concerned. And also you must realize this is not only the couples who suffer, their relations, their parents, everybody suffers all around. Their children suffer all around. So it will put an end to all that bitterness, all that acrimonious litigation that goes on, and in the long run, people will part more happily rather than grinding together and trying to maintain an unhappy marriage which is creating problems for both sides. Therefore, I think this will really go a long way in ensuring that the party is more happy. As you see in the Western world, this gentleman somewhere was talking about Western culture as though it's the most rotten culture, and our bright burning culture and is a very fine culture. It's not that. Every culture is good. Some parts of it is good, some part of it is bad. Therefore, we realize that outside people are very happy with this and they part very nicely. They live as friends after the divorce. And this prenuptial agreement goes a long way in ensuring that after the parting in a divorce, the divorce or the parting takes place in happier circumstances rather than with bitterness.
Right, we've run out of time here, and I just want to quickly thank all of our guests and point out to you that while, of course, marriages or weddings are romantic, romantic situations, we must remember that there is, in a marriage, a lot of other very complicated things: assets, money, time, children. The question that we really have to answer is, will prenuptial agreements bring down the amount of time spent in family court, the amount of money, and the amount of pain? So while the government of India actually considered prenuptial agreements going forward, it might be something that might actually save a lot of families a lot of pain. Thanks for watching.